guys, in this video we're going to be checking out the Mattel Justice League. This is the basic class, Aquaman. Now before we do anything, let's get some measurements for Aquaman. He stands exactly at 6 inches tall. For his accessories, he comes included with his trident. In this instance, he comes with one that's gold. To compare it to, and we're going to do a couple of comparisons in this video, comparing it to the multiverse version of Aquaman, I have to admit this one has a lot more sculpted detail. But this one, of course, is a different color. This one's more like I kind of like the gunmetal gray color motif more so than the gold. But it is interesting that the sculpt on them are so drastically different from one another. Not unless he has more than one trident during, not only during the Justice League movie, but maybe also in his own standalone movie. Maybe he's going to come with a couple different tridents. There's a couple of different options you can do right there. One of the other things he comes with is very strangely, he comes with like this water sort of, I can only gauge it to be like some sort of whip, like a water whip. It's a slight translucent plastic. As you can see, it's got a little bit of pliability to it. It's a little flexible is what I'm trying to say. And again, it's translucent plastic. It has a very broad handle, I might add. So you can fit it into his hand this way. But then strangely, it's got this big plug on the side of it, and I thought initially it would plug somewhere onto the figure itself, his back or something like that. The only thing I can gauge is you can also have it in his hand. We're going to go with the broader, the more open hand here, is that you can also have it like this as well, where it looks like he's shooting the water. That's the only thing I can figure out from this, because the instructions give no indication whatsoever. There's nothing included with this figure that says exactly how he holds this, but I'm assuming it's those one of two ways, either this way or you can have it this way as well. It's kind of a slightly silly looking accessory, but I guess they have to include something after all. Why not do that instead of more posability, right? So the figure itself is pretty good, actually. For the basic line of figures, it's one of the better ones. Now, the only one I really have to compare it with right now, I don't know where my Batman went, but I can compare it next to Superman, which the Superman from a paint level was much better than the multiverse figure. I still don't know which head sculpt I prefer more so. This head sculpt's not the greatest, but the multiverse one was just terrible. There's the two side by side. Superman, strangely, still has very stumpy looking legs. Aquaman has that as well, but it seems like he's proportioned a little bit better. He also stands a little bit taller than Superman. Not really by much, but just a little bit taller. And also as a segue then to the multiverse, here he is next to Multiverse Aquaman, which really seems like a night and day comparison. While this one, I have to admit, has a better hair sculpt and beard sculpt, I almost feel like this one here looks a little bit more like Jason Momoa, in my own humbled opinion. The armors are similar, but still different from one another. This one has a more distinct green sort of coloring to it, whereas this one seemed to have more a green undertone and then had the gold wash over top of it. Again, it's a very different looking head sculpt. You might maybe favor this one over this one. I like the flow of the hair a little bit more. Somebody also, I think, said that this one looks like Rob Zombie, which I can also see. I see that as well. But I think of the two, this one could have used a little bit better paint, but I feel like this one might be just a little bit better. Just my opinion. Obviously, the height difference is a big difference as well. I mean, one is much drastically taller than the other. And again, I don't know if the plan is that this is supposed to be the exact same armor, because if it is very different from one another. This one has shoulder pads. This one does not have shoulder pads. Like, the boots are very different. I guess that's not true. The boots are similar, but this one, again, has a lot more paint to it than this one here that relies just more on this kind of caramel brown. At least this one can be said that it's got the extra golds, and they just went a little bit extra with what they, did to paint this guy. This one just sadly doesn't have nearly as much of that. He's got also a very strange thing going on here. where it looks like he's just been airbrushed areas of green. Like this was probably all the color of this entire figure, and then just seems random spots, airbrush, airbrush, airbrush of this metallic green. The lower legs seem to have green consistently all the way through, but for some strange reason, the top half of it just has these just very obvious just sprayings of this metallic green across its torso and arms. Paint quality for the most part is pretty clean, but again, it's very easy to get a clean paint job when you're really not applying that much paint to a figure anyways. Posability on this figure, let's go through that. His head rotates all the way around. He has long hair, but luckily the hair is just soft enough that you can rotate the head all the way around and hinge it up and down. The shoulders, luckily, you can at least move outward, so that's at least something. You rotate the arms all the way around. He's got a bend at the forearm, which also allows the forearm to rotate. And he also has a rotation and a rock back and forth on the individual wrists here. For your waist, he doesn't have an ab crunch, but he does have the waist swivel. And this is where the figure kind of suffers. He doesn't have the split on the leg, which I know they try to do this so that they promote the multiverse figure. If you don't want this figure, but you want this figure that has more posability, you go the route of the multiverse figure. But if that's the case, why would they hinge the arms outward? Why wouldn't they just make those straight swivels as well? It's like they can... It's almost like they reveal their hand by saying, look, we're capable of doing this with the arms, but somehow now we've forgotten that you can do it with the legs. Like, sorry, we've left that off. He has the hinge on the knee, that's about it though, and he has absolutely no articulation in the feet, but he does have peg holes on the undersides of the feet, so if you are one that displays their figures with stands, you're in luck. Again, with these basic class figures, it's kind of the same thing for me as the Star Wars Black Series figures versus the basic class figures. I really ask myself a lot of the time, why do companies even bother making this? Why not just make a fully posable figure, release one line of figures, and maybe release little small interactive things that the kids can want to pick up? I still don't get why they would want to release basic figures as well as multiverse figures, when I think a lot of times people would probably want to favor getting a more posable figure in exchange for something like this. Granted, you could say, well, you know, it's a more affordable means, so this is something where the kids can then pick it up, because these figures are only about $10 to $12. The multiverse figures are closer to $24 to $26, depending on where you find them. So yes, I will give it that Aquaman here as a basic release is a much more affordable way of releasing the figures. But one can't help but think, if they didn't simply release two lines and they scaled down the production of two lines of figures instead of and only producing one line, would it not save the cost of materials and thereby make one line release a little bit more affordable? Again, I have absolutely no reason to believe that there's really any market to have two lines of figures. That's just my own personal opinion. I think this Aquaman turned out pretty good, but again, I have to think to myself, what is this guy accomplishing that the multiverse figure couldn't simply have done on its own? That being said, it's still one of the better sculpts. Certainly its heads and tails better than the Superman figure. I wish I had my Batman figure nearby. I think the Batman is still a pretty good looking figure. We're still going to have a look at Wonder Woman in a future video. But I think Aquaman here turned out pretty good. I have to question his existence as to why he has to be on the pegs. Today though, nonetheless, we were having a look at the new Justice League basic class figures. I don't know why. Today we're having a look at basic figure release of Aquaman. If you guys like this video and certainly want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit this video with a like. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe to this channel, what are you waiting for? A water whip? Which I guess is what this guy has. Don't be a Jimmy JJ. Hit that little subscribe button down below. You won't miss a beat when it comes to future videos. And certainly, if you're also a fan of specifically the Justice League movie figures, I've got a playlist specifically just for that. You can go there. If you say to yourself, I'm not going to watch any other video on this guy's channel except for Justice League stuff, I say shame on you, but I also say there's that playlist that you can go directly to, and it will have nothing but Justice League figures. As always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do. I'll see you guys next time.